So the famous author, humorist Samuel Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, was noted for his wit and his sarcasm about religion. He, at a time and a place in middle America when it wasn't that popular to speak out against church, he did on a regular basis. One day he was at a dinner party sitting next to a Baptist minister, and the Baptist minister was kind of grilling him about his knowledge of the Bible and wondering where he stood on this theological point and that. And Mark Twain was being who he was in response. And finally the minister looked at him and said, "Sir, doesn't it bother you how much you don't know about the Bible?" And Mark Twain said, "On the contrary, sir, the parts of the Bible that I do know really bother me." I was born and raised in the Protestant church, the First Protestant United Church of Christ, Evangelical and Reformed. Downtown New Braunfels. Third row, the left side of the pew, every Sunday, 18 years. And I've continued to study the Bible along with many other spiritual texts for the last 40 years or so. This has been my avocation as well as my vocation, to try to understand what the wise teachers of all traditions have had to tell us. And I must say, the Bible isn't as central to my life as it was, but Jesus the Christ still is very much a part of my life. I consider myself to have a deeply personal relationship with a deeply impersonal God. So the God of my understanding is total mystery. I don't understand anything about it. The more I try to understand God, the less I understand. The more I study, the less I know. And the more I look within, the more I have faith. I'm not saying anything to you about how you should live your life or what your spiritual path should be. But for me, the indwelling Christ is a very real presence. And one of the pieces of Scripture that I know really well, that has stayed burned in my mind since I was about 6 years old, is that amazing text in Luke chapter 23, verse 24, when Jesus is hanging on the cross. He's hanging on the cross, and he's got nails in his palms and his feet, and the Romans soldiers beneath them have taken his clothes and are casting dice to see who's going to get the pants and who's going to get the shirt. And Jesus looks at them, and some scholars say he's not actually looking at them at all. He's looking at all the people that he had spoken to and been with for 33 years who hadn't fully heard him. And he said the famous words, "Forgive them, they know not what they do." Forgive them, they know not what they do. And for me, all these years later, those words burn in my mind, because the inner Christ in me, which is that place, my understanding of the indwelling Christ is that there's spirit, it's ephemeral, it's everywhere. There's the human called Rudi Harst, and somewhere where the physical person called Rudi Harst meets that ephemeral, mysterious source of all being, all becoming, eternally unfolding forever and ever, amen, that great mystery thing, where those two meet is Jesus the Christ, is Rudi the Christ, actually. I'm going to go ahead and say that because I believe firmly in Rudi the Christ, and I don't know what I'm talking about. I'll be the first. I don't mean to argue about it. I'm just telling you where I'm coming from as I'm starting my little talk here this morning. And my understanding is that the indwelling Christ is forever asking me to forgive them, for they know not what they do. But who is them? Is it my parents and my teachers and my neighbor and the people I'm having troubles with at work? No. Them for me is those voices in my head. That committee that beats me up, that's always trying to put something big on my shoulders that I'm not prepared to carry. And the Christ in me is always saying, forgive them. They know not what they do. They're just voices in your monkey mind. That's not who you truly are. And because I know that every single time there's an unforgiveness between me and somebody else at work or in my family, anytime someone's doing something to me and I'm feeling the victim of their stuff and I'm mad at them and I haven't forgiven them, what I'm really playing out is that inner committee. Very seldom is anyone really coming after me with sticks and stones, much less grenades. I live in a perfectly safe and comfortable society. Now, that's not true for everybody in the whole planet. Granted, I know there are many people living under the threat of war and danger right now, and I know there are people whose life is in danger from loved ones and rape and incest. I know there are terrible things in the world. I grant you. But for me and for most of us in this room, we really lead pretty comfortable lives, pretty safe lives. And most of the people that we haven't forgiven yet for doing terrible things to us really are just reflections of our inner consciousness asking me, forgive, let go. And as I understand it, lack of forgiving is a sin. Not a sin like a big mark that's going to be crossed up on some book and keep me from going to heaven someday, but sin in the original sense of the word from Latin, meaning to miss the mark. Sin simply is an old archery term from when an archer was shooting his arrow at a target and missing the mark. Sin was to be outside of the mark. Someone would call out and say, sin, as in, you missed. And that's what sin is in my understanding. Sin is missing the mark. And the Christ within me, my indwelling Christ, my understanding of spirituality, however you name it, is it's calling me to remember that in this moment, I am free to let go of judgments of myself and all others and stop missing the mark and just come home to that bullseye, which is who I truly am. I'm fully aware that this is not everyone's understanding of the Christ. I'm not saying it should be yours. I'm simply here to share mine. And here on this Easter morning, there is part of me that's saying, forgive them. They know not what they do. And the them is that committee within myself that has not forgiven, that has been withholding love from individuals in my life who look like they're giving me trouble, but mostly myself. And you say, well, Rudy, that's all well and good, but what about it? What do I do about it? What do you do about it? What you find yourself missing the mark again. You find yourself beating yourself up again. How do you go about forgiving? And I've come up with a relatively straightforward answer to that question for myself, and that is to simply call out an SOS. And the SOS for me stands for the three letters S, show up, O, open up, S, shut up. So, in the middle of unforgiveness of myself or another person, in the middle of my judgment, if I find myself mad at my dog again because whatever. If I find myself in that space, whether it's at my dog or at myself, the first thing to do is show up and recognize, oh, I'm mad again. There's a part of me that's now 2 years old and my dog's not doing what I want and I'm mad. There's someone who's saying something to me that's really making me feel offended, which is really just what? Which is really just an opportunity to show up and own the fact that I'm mad again and scared again, judgmental again. And then, having showed up, to open up Just open up and remember that there's something more than me going on here. That the Christ within, the Buddha within, the Goddess within, all of life is calling me to open up to something bigger than my closed off place in the moment. I don't have to know how to do it. I don't have to know what to do. All I have to do is show up and open up for the possibility of something more. And then the third and vital step is to shut up. If that's too strong a word for you, then just surrender. How about that word? Or if that's too strong a word, just the word simmer. Just, instead of being at a boil, just be at a simmer. Relax. And make room for something else to come through. Because the moment I step back from that place of anger, that disappointment, of judgment, of trying to hold the other person out because they're wrong so that I can be right, the moment I'm there, I'm in a really contracted place. And what I really want, what I want, what you want, what we want, is to be happy, to relax, to be present, just to show up, open up, and shut up. And then what happens? Well, if you're like me, you'll be relaxed for a long time, like say 5 seconds. Or 10. If it's a good day, 2 minutes. And then you get plugged in again by that same person, that same dog, the same situation is still there. Oh yeah. Just show up without needing to fix or change anything. Just show up. Own up to, I'm mad. Open up. Shut up. SOS. 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 Because my understanding is that as I take part in that little 3-step process, the indwelling Christ, God, life, infinite intelligence will always provide an alternative, if only just to be quiet for a few moments. And as I'm being quiet in a few moments, it gives me a chance to relax. And if for the other person, the dog, to relax. It's amazing how my dog reflects my state of mind. It's amazing how often I find myself projecting my stuff onto a perfectly innocent animal who wants nothing more than to lay around and nap. But somehow when I'm tense, the dog managed to get tense. Does that make any sense to anybody else here? So that's what Easter calls me to today. What does Easter call you to today? I don't know. I don't know, but I invite you to hear these words. I'm very lucky. I've got a number of spiritual texts in my house, and every once in a while I just flip one open at random to a page and see what word lands there. One book that really works for me is the book I wrote. And the reason is because I wrote it full of things that I'm still trying to learn. So anytime I flip them open, invariably it's something I really need to pay attention to. So as I was, one day this week, I opened the book at random, and the word was forgiveness. It just popped off the page to me. So let me read you this few paragraphs. Behind the velvet curtain. It is springtime, and the signs and symbols of renewal surround us. Wildflowers, trees, Easter eggs, and warm breezes take turns tapping us on the shoulder, reminding us of the newness all around and within us, inviting us to remember that we too can be renewed if only we will allow the old to drop away, to be replaced by what wants to blossom inside. Forgiveness plays an integral part in this process of renewal, but all too often we avoid forgiving ourselves and others because we think that there's something hard that needs to be done, when in fact, Forgiveness is simply a state of being. It has a sweet, juicy taste like the ripest of mangoes or freshly picked peaches. It satisfies a deep-down hunger we seem to carry half forgotten, stuffed in the dark, dusty corners of our hearts. And it is only as we allow ourselves to be touched by the healing power of forgiveness that we remember just how much we have been hurting in silence. How we have been skirting the many small sadnesses accumulated in a lifetime. And whether all those half-hidden hurts occurred long ago in yesteryear or yesterday or this morning, they keep bouncing around inside of us, exploding at random intervals like hand grenades with time-delayed fuses. That is, unless we choose otherwise. Because forgiveness is a choice, one that only I can make. But my ego will always try its best to stop me from making such a choice, because forgiveness seems like certain death to my ego, threatening its livelihood as judge, jury, and chief defender of my pride and shame, and it doesn't want to surrender or stop playing its game over and over, declaring itself winner time and time again. Still, as you and I willingly take the risk of moving through discomfort anyway, forgiveness brushes against your cheek like velvet curtain, immensely soft and comforting. And then the curtain is magically drawn back to show you previously unseen possibilities, singing the joyful chorus that your soul has been longing to hear. Ali, 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 ox is free. Come home. The real miracle of forgiveness is that it's a gift to the giver as well as the receiver. Both taste the sweetness, both benefit whether a single word has ever been said aloud or a single physical action has been taken. Both giver and receiver are brushed by the velvet curtain, pulled back to show there is no separation and never was, except in our hearts and minds. Which brings up a simple question. Who or what can you and I forgive today? And what in the world are we waiting for? That's my question, and I'm sticking to it.